Bojo was a wine I think you will remember, made from a grape they call Gamay. Nouveau is released on the third Thursday in November. Oh, I think that is today. Get back, get back, get back and drink that Beaujolais. 4, 3, 2, 1. Bingo! Right, it is now, in some parts of the world, I think Christmas Island, it is now the third Thursday in November. And if you're a wine fan, you will know that that's the day on which Beaujolais Nouveau is... Beaujolais Nouveau est arrivé. Beaujolais Nouveau has arrived. It's not officially arrived in the UK yet, but I've got a bottle here from Chateau de Grandmont. And it's been sent to me by a winemaker stroke wine merchant, a guy called Chris Piper. If you know UK wine merchants, Chris Piper has been around for, I don't know, 30 odd years. He's been having his business down in the southwest, and during that time he's also been making wine in Beaujolais, first at Chateau des Tours, and now he's making them for these guys, Chateau de Grandmont. Now, Beaujolais Nouveau Day used to be a massive day in the wine calendar. Why isn't it quite as big now? I suppose a couple of reasons. First of all, it was a logistical nightmare. It was almost like a victim of its own success. I mean, the idea was that bottles of wine could leave the cellars in the southern end of Burgundy at 1:12 on the third Thursday in November, and then there was a race for who could be the person who would be able to get the wine on their table in their restaurant or bar or whatever, anywhere in the world. And people used to get injured in the process. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, people used to have ended up drinking 3 bottles of wine by lunchtime, and then used to say, "Oh, that Beaujolais, it does give you a hangover." Yeah, right. But now it's a bit more sedate. So what happens is the wine is released that little bit earlier, shipped over to where it needs to be, and then it goes on sale in these various places. So instead of there being loads and loads of parties around where people are sitting there with their check tablecloths, eating baguettes, pâté, cheese and swigging too much Beaujolais, now it's not quite as... there are a few people who still do it, but not as many as used to. And the other factor is that other parts of the world now produce wines earlier. Beaujolais Nouveau used to be the first wine of the vintage that was on sale, but now we buy a lot of Southern Hemisphere wines. They have their vintage 6 months earlier. So this is 2009. I was already tasting 2009 wines back in July and June even. Yeah, it's not quite the same frisson about it. But 2009 apparently is a fabulous vintage for Beaujolais. So let's give this a whirl and see what it's like. Well, it's got that classic raspberry and pepper edge of the Gamay grape. And in order to make a wine that you can get to show early, they do it in a way called carbonic maceration. Basically, they get a load of grapes, push them in a vat, uncrushed, and then they cover it with carbon dioxide and let the weight of the grapes squash the fruit at the bottom. A sort of fermentation goes on within the grape. It means you get soft, juicy wines because it's not had all this mass of skins to be in contact with. So the wine doesn't taste it doesn't taste really full and tannic early on. And that's the way that Nouveau tends to be made. There are more serious Beaujolais, and I think in a vintage like this, if it is as good as they say, these are wines that the best ones could go on for 10 years or more. But Nouveau is all about immediate juicy gluggability. I'm going to have an immediate juicy glug. Well, that's pretty good. It's got that slightly spicy, peppery, raspberry and red cherry edge, an earthiness about it, and it feels desperately young. I mean, for me, buy your Nouveau now, drink it. This is classic Christmas dinner wine, perfect with turkey. You'll notice I've forgotten the spittoon, but that's in the spirit of Beaujolais Nouveau. So yeah, it's not trying to be anything grand. It's just a nice, friendly, very, very drinkable wine. This is probably one of the best ones around. It's not cheap. It's about I think it's about £7.5, and it's a Beaujolais village rather than just Beaujolais. In other words, it's come from a small enclave within the greater Beaujolais region, where the vineyards are more favourably sited. I think I'll be having quite a bit of that with lunch. I've got to work this afternoon, but that will be interesting. So thanks, Chris Piper, for that. But Chris, now I remember seeing a comment that you made in some interview a few years ago, and it was saying that provincial wine merchants, and for those not in the UK, that tends to mean those outside the London area, are treated like by the press. Can I take issue with that? Because I used to work with a lot of wine merchants around the country. I used to edit both the Good Wine Guide and the Which Wine Guide. So I'd be in touch with loads and loads of merchants around the country. And it was, I used to hear this line a lot. And I was almost like between a rock and a hard place, because being a London-based journalist, I'm in the Pennines now, so 200 miles away, I could see both points of view. I saw that my colleagues really didn't get out that much, and they would know a few select wine merchants around the country, but not too many beyond that. At the same time, some of these people who were moaning weren't actually doing anything about it. Honestly, wine merchants, what you'll find is that wine writers in general like good wine, and if you've got a good wine, they'll be pretty keen to say something about it. You're not going to get like coverage every week in the broadsheets, but say twice a year, send, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe 10 people an email saying, we've got this fabulous wine, would you like to try it? It's only £10, a £10 wine. It's one of those. It's a nice level, £10. It's a sort of thing that if you're a cheapskate, that's what you trade up to, and if you're well heeled, that's your everyday drinking level. So say, look, I've got a fabulous wine. Would you like to try it? And these guys aren't going to write about it every time, but if you do it enough, doesn't cost you all that much money, and you'll build up more of a rapport. So yeah, wine writers, get your finger out. Wine merchants, bit of the same to you, and me, I'll just sit in the middle and drink my Beaujolais Nouveau. See you soon.